Spotify once again, and their very shady, dastardly, disgusting tactics when it comes to music and just kind of their overall impact on the industry. A conversation that seems to be never ending because, you know, this is the world we live in now. But here we go. Spotify is bad. From Anthony Fantano. Let's go.
Hi everyone. Hamthony Slam Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. Now look, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that I am no stranger to criticizing Spotify and the music streaming model at large, especially when it comes to ripping off artists. Recently, we did a great interview with author Liz Pelly about her new book that dives into exactly that. Link in the D box if you want to check that out. But the thing is, even that conversation and even that book could not possibly encompass all the ways that Spotify continues to be garbage, which is why I am coming through here on this video and essentially giving you guys some garbage updates. First off, one of the most offensive but simultaneously not surprising news items to come up is that apparently Spotify made a $150,000 donation to Trump's inauguration ceremony. Now, Spotify, from what I understand,
I mean, are you surprised? Are you surprised? Even the so-called companies that you think you support are going to support whoever is in office. It doesn't matter. Business is going to business. Corporation are going to corporate. Like, all they do is care about the bottom line, and whoever's in office, they're going to give money to. They're going to try to peddle their influence to. They're going to try to get support from. Businesses do not care. We are definitely in an age where people try to put values to businesses in the same way that they do to people, and then turn around and get butthurt when they realize, oh, businesses actually don't have values or morals or actually give a fuck. It's just about the bottom line. Yes. Yes, it's always been that way. The only reason that they even kind of low key sometimes virtue signal is because they think it's going to help them sell shit to you and get your money. If they don't think it will, then they won't do it. Just look at what's happening now. Everybody's fully going back to things the way they were before. They all that like remote working, all that DI, all that whatever, diversity, inclusion, whatever. Like, they are all rolling all of that back. Like, it's just a funny time to be alive where people are getting so upset about businesses and corporations doing exactly what they've been doing for centuries. Like, you cannot look at a business and a corporation and expect them to act with morals and values because they don't care. It's just about money. That's it. And whatever they think is going to help them get the most money is what they're going to do. So I'm not even surprised by that or even upset. I've never looked at a company and thought, oh, they're good.
Defended this whole thing, talking about it being kind of like business as usual, and they often will host political things and such as money is changing hands, or they're showing support for certain figures in political office. But yeah, I guess in a way this is not particularly new or anything, given that Spotify has actually spent quite a bit of money lobbying the US government over the years. I guess we shouldn't be surprised to find out that they,
and of course they would, because basically they are a monopoly. At this point in time, they are a monopoly. Where do you think, 75% of the market goes for music and music streaming and just music consumption comes from probably Spotify? If I were to look at the numbers, it might even be higher. Like, they own and control a vast majority of the music catalog, a vast majority of the music streaming, a vast majority of just music consumption overall. Like, that is the definition of a monopoly. It's literally them and Apple Music. Who else? SoundCloud, Bandcamp, 1% of the market at best? Of course they're going to lobby, because if you really looked at what they are as a company and how they operate, they are, by definition, a monopoly.
They are continuing under the Trump administration, but it's kind of funny to see this action coming from a company that supposedly cares about its user base of listeners and artists that are essentially its lifeblood, especially given just how many queer fans and singers and rappers and producers helped contribute to some of the biggest and most hit records of last year that Spotify probably made millions and millions and millions of dollars off of. The reason reason I bring them up specifically is because of the Republican and Trump administration stance to prohibit the acknowledgement of trans identities and various queer identities within a government context. And again, you would think a company that actually cares about these people or has some kind of conscience might actually sort of second guess themselves when it comes to passing such an administration over 100,000 in US dollars. But no, apparently Spotify has no qualms with it whatsoever, no hesitation, when truly and honestly they should. But again, you can't be too surprised when this is the same company that has passed tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars at this point to Joe Rogan, of all people, to continue exclusively hosting his podcast where he just basically spews the most uninformed garbage on the planet. I guess basically what I'm trying to get at with this particular section of the video is that we really need to wipe from our minds the thought and the false understanding that companies such as Spotify are like, independent rogue figures that help change the face of the music industry, and they're not big, well-connected, super influential, powerful corporations. That's in fact what they are. There are sides to this dichotomy, and they are on a particular one, and it's the side of the rich, of the powerful, and the well-connected. Case in point, CEO Daniel Ek has continued his stock cash out grind. We have reported
$600 million. Daniel Ek, CEO of Spotify, has made $600 million. That's fucking insane. Insane. And he doesn't make music. He doesn't do the one thing his platform makes money from, it's music. And he's made $600 million. Hey, how are them checks looking like, artists out there? How are those Spotify checks looking like?
On this channel multiple times that Daniel has essentially enriched himself to the tune of millions and millions of millions of dollars by gradually cashing out his Spotify stock shares. Apparently, he has pulled out $29 million more dollars. What is he going to do with that? Invest in more military tech? I don't know. He could. Buy another massive piece of property? Time will only tell. Lord knows one thing he's not going to be doing with that money is giving it to musicians. That cash is much more likely to end up in the pocket of a military contractor or a far-right politician. And shout out to theneedledrop.com as well as writer Victoria Barlando, who put up this recent piece pointing to the fact that Spotify and UMG are entering a multi-year partnership to restructure monetization and subscription services. Reminder that the major labels currently still own a financial stake in Spotify, and for years now, the exclusive deals that Spotify has inked with the majors and what that means for the artists that they have signed to their label and how money and payments are structured, the wheelings and dealings and details of these agreements are not fully transparent. But you know that the majors have made sure that their I's are dotted and their T's are crossed, and they're fully aware of how all of it works, making them fully complicit of Spotify's mass robbery of artists across the board. And apparently this agreement is going to be ushering in something very ominous that is being dubbed Streaming 2.0, which is said to, and I quote, "Instead of focusing on the simple business model of paying for unlimited streaming of a seemingly endless catalog of music, UMG proposed a subscription tier model that adjusts to the user's listening habits, more partnerships with merchandising companies, and adapting monetization rates for artists depending on their popularity." So again,
So we've had, just like Fantano over here, we've had a lot of conversations about Spotify and just the music industry and streaming and just kind of the impact on just the medium as a whole, and pretty much have spoken at length about the many, many things that they've done and the many, many things and impacts that they've had on, creativity and music, whatever. And obviously, because we interview and talk to so many artists and work of artists, we have, even more knowledge about, the dealings of Spotify and just how little they actually pay out and just how much of an fruitless uphill battle it almost is to be on there. But I've been saying this for a long time. Like, Spotify doesn't make money. Like, they make money from stocks and investments and people that think they are worth what they are worth. their stockholders pump up their price. But as a company, their model is extremely, extremely limited when you kind of consider it. They only have one source of really income, and that is subscriptions and streaming. And like same thing with Netflix, while they were in such hot water for a long time, is because there is a finite amount of people that are willing to pay for subscriptions to that streaming service. And once you hit that finite amount, and once you kind of had that widespread adoption, what's the next route other than pumping up the prices of subscription, creating different tiers, finding new ways to milk listeners who are already invested into your platform of more money? And because people have become so ingrained and invested in said platforms, they no longer have any other source of music to speak of. At least back in the day, there might have been iTunes or whatnot, but people were still buying CDs. So like, if you didn't like what iTunes was doing, you could go buy a CD. And yes, there are ways for a lot of artists to still kind of put out physical forms of medium. That market, the amount of artists that have the money to even do that these days, is extremely small and extremely limited. Shit, computers don't even have CD drives anymore, so it's not like you can just rip the songs and put it on your player like you used to do. Me personally, I have access to a lot of music, so I don't use or pay for any like personal streaming services, and I kind of have a lot of my stuff downloaded. But that is not the case for most people. And because their audience and just the general population is so heavily invested and ingrained into this ecosystem, where else are they going to go? Like, there's Apple Music, but they'll just do the same thing. Yes, there's Tidal, but they will just do the same thing. That is the playbook for these streaming services. Build up a massive subscription base and then raise the prices. That's it. Raise the prices because there's nowhere else for them to go. Destroy the competition. Make it hard for artists and musicians to put out music anywhere else because labels have deals, backroom deals to only put their music on certain places, if you did not know that. And then raise the prices and get money off of that and sell some shares. And that is it, because that model is extremely limited. Why do you think they went to podcasting? Why do you think they are also using AI companies to pump out heartless, soulless AI music to fill your playlist? Yes, if you didn't know, go watch one of our past videos where we actually talked about how Spotify got caught paying, music warehouses, music companies to pump out AI music to fill playlists, to not have to pay artists more money than they would pay, these people, these programmers putting out trash music, soulless music. If they can cut out the musician altogether, they would. They would. But the simple fact is, the only way for them to make more money as artists continue to fight for more pay as a streaming service is to raise the price for all the listeners. And because they now have pretty much a monopoly and stranglehold on music in general and music consumption in general, that is the ultimate route, as he kind of laid out here. Yes, there's going to be new tiers. Yes, there's going to be higher payouts. Yes, there's going to be higher charges. And soon, I wouldn't be surprised if the free tier is gone all together. Yeah, so yes, Spotify is a very, very bad company and a very bad actor in terms of, music as an art form. Now, if you're talking about music as a business, yes, they've kind of changed things and revolutionized things to the point where it's like, damn, they really did that. There's no more labels. There's none of this. Like, they are basically the one major label out there. And then, Apple being a much smaller player. But in terms of the art form and the artistry of music, they could not have been worse for it in general. And yes, it's great that you can have access to all these new fans and people can listen to new music, but look at what they're doing. Look at the way playlists are being used. Look at the way that they manufacture algorithms and virality. You can't look at this and be like, oh yeah, we're in a much better space than we've ever been. Yes, you can put out music at a much lower bar, but is that such a great thing at the end of the day? Especially when they control everything? I don't know.
More plans to screw and essentially push out smaller artists who aren't doing quite the numbers and the scale that the majors and the bigger dogs.
And their only way that they're going to make money outside of raising prices, is making these exclusive deals with the biggest artists out there because they are the ones driving probably 60, 70, 80% of their streaming, of their money, of their revenue. That is why songs like Not Like Us and all this drive so much money for these companies. And that's why they are going to continue to cater to the biggest artists out there at the detriment of the little guy
on the platform are doing in terms of views and streams and engagement, which is like pretty much the freaking opposite of what this whole system was created to change in the first place. This idea that like only a certain set of industry connected musicians like had access to the abilities to share their music with the world and get it out there for everyone to hear. Spotify is essentially going to be creating with the majors hand in hand a hierarchy that pretty much says to any small artist that isn't coming in with a lot of big buzz or a lot of music industry endorsements, hey, fuck you. If we even allow you to upload your shit onto our platform, you can pretty much expect it to end up in a dead zone where, due to your lack of popularity, you're either going to see a lack of exposure or really a total and utter lack of money, even if you do get some streams or some engagement. I mean, the whole intention behind this is made even clearer by this Daniel Ek quote in the article, where he essentially promises growth for the music industry, not musicians, not music, but the industry around it. There's more to this piece on theneedledrop.com, and we will link you to it down in the description box again. Feel free to let us know what you think.
I mean, it's not looking good for artists and artistry and wanting to be a musician these days. Like, yes, there are artists that break out and become massive stars like a Sabrina Carpenter or a, Chaperone and like all these Gracie Abrams. Like, there are obviously success stories when it comes to streaming and like the algorithm playlist, but also there's way more horror stories than that. And like, it makes it seem like it is doing much better than it is, but like they are not playing fair at all. And like, I don't really see this going in a positive manner for the industry overall. But speaking on Spotify a little bit more, here it is. Here's the article. Spotify maintains it's paying musicians a lot. Actually, days after Bjork called it the worst thing for musicians, the streamer shared that they paid the most they ever had to musicians in 2024. And Bjork ain't wrong. Bjork is pretty much always on the right side when it comes to industry and labels and whatnot. Like, she's kind of one of those trailblazers, still one of those little mavericks in the industry that doesn't do things as to be expected when it comes to a musician who's got a following and who's had hits and who's had success in the industry like she has. Would she have more success if she kind of played the game a little bit more? Probably, but she had the integrity and the gumption to not, and that is why a lot of people love her for what she is. Spotify has caught a lot of heat over the past month. Songwriters boycotted its Grammy party over lost royalties, and then Bjork grabbed the mic and called the stream probably the worst thing that has happened to musicians. Like, that's a strong statement. That is a very strong sentiment. The worst thing that has happened to musicians ever. I don't know. 360 deals might be worse, but Spotify is kind of up there. There's really no coming back from a public Bjork condemnation. Give it his best shot. Music business VP David Kiefer shared that the company paid out $10 billion to the music industry in 2024, 10 times more than they had a decade ago. Well, also you had probably 10 times more people streaming on Spotify than you had a decade ago. Also, you have pretty much no competition to this day and age. Also, if you're paying out $10 billion to the music industry, how much are you actually pocketing? And when you say music industry, are you talking about labels or are you talking about artists? Despite these increases, however, there's still a lot of vitriol over a decent chunk of that did go to the artists. The release states that well over 10,000 artists generate over 100,000 per year from Spotify alone. 10,000 artists. Not bad. 100,000. I mean, doesn't go that far these days, but not bad. But it seems to suck for most of those beneath the Bad Bunnies and Taylor Swifts of the world. 100,000 per year. In a follow-up post on Twitter, Spotify wrote that in there. Paid 2/3 of every dollar generated from music as royalties to rights holders. So to labels. But pretty much, because labels still hold the keys to everything, and labels allowed Spotify to get as big as it did because they have interest and stock and investment in Spotify as a whole. Yes, if you did not know that, the people truly behind Spotify are the music labels. So the game just shifted, and they are still very much in control of everything that happens behind the scenes. Two-thirds of every dollar generated from music as royalties to right holders, who then pay artists and songwriters based on their agreements. This gets sticky though, as the company recently started bundling those royalties between multiple publishing companies. That means the company still pays out the same amount, but everyone gets a little less than they would if the pool of recipients were smaller. It is very nice to be individually honored, but it is better for me and my entire songwriter community paid fairly for our art. There are no songs without songwriters. Yeah, and 10,000 to artists. Think about that. Yes, to the biggest artists out there, there are clearly like tens of thousands of artists that do pretty well and that have a big name, considering like legacy acts, even artists that came out, 5-10 years ago that have big songs that still can kind of eat off of that. Then you have obviously new artists, but that is the artist. We're not talking about the songwriters. We're not talking about the producers. We're not talking about contributors to songs who probably get a small fraction of what they're getting. And like, I cannot imagine trying to be a songwriter and surviving in this day and age. Like, you don't get points, you don't get royalties, really. Like, oh my God, that shit would be should be devastating. Spotify solution doubled the amount of paying subscribers from over 500 million to the current 1 billion, from over 500 million currently to 1 billion in the future. So like I said, they're basically trying to Facebook this thing. They're trying to get everybody around the world basically using Spotify as the primary music consumption platform, which, they already are. But to reach 1 billion? That'd be crazy, and that'd be a very devastating thing for the industry of music and music independence as a whole. This is a realistic goal we should collectively set. Retention through curated playlists and AI DJ. Conversion of free tier to premium subscribers, a more global spread. And you know how you convert free tier? You basically get rid of it, because I think that is exactly where they're going to be going next. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be in a very, very strange state for quite a long time. I don't think that we will ever kind of figure out this whole streaming business and, how to pay artists fairly. I don't see that changing anytime soon, especially the way they lobby the government and to keep them off their backs in terms of monopolies. So I don't really see this changing anytime soon, quite frankly. I think it is what it is. I think it probably will only get worse before it gets better, unless there's somehow, some way, a new platform pops up. But the problem is that platform is still going to have to deal with labels in some way, shape, and form. And if they are not able to kind of contribute to these music labels' coffers the way that Spotify does, because they are directly invested in them, I don't see this turning out well. And having a label directly invested in a streaming platform cannot be good. Like, that is literally bringing the wolves into the sheep's end. Like, that's it. Like, you're bringing the wolves in to the crowd of sheep. Like, you are literally bringing them in. So I don't really see how you can kind of work your way around this. It's up to the biggest artists out there to basically kind of shuck and get rid of this whole kind of old label platform. But there's a reason why they are big. There's a reason why they're still around, because they have connections that go back years and decades, if not hundreds of years. So like, I don't see this changing. I just don't see it changing. And unfortunately, we are stuck with the model that we're stuck with. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think is the future of this kind of whole streaming thing? What do you think Spotify could do better? What do you think in terms of alternatives to Spotify? Is there any way to kind of break free from this kind of matrix that we're in? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's start getting to the main kind of topics. As you can see from the title, First up, I want to talk about is K-Dot, Kendrick Mother Lamar, who did the Super Bowl, who basically had one of the greatest year runs I've ever seen in terms of musicians, especially in hip hop, who all the way from like that to now the Super Bowl, and just absolutely has killed it pretty much every single step of the way. He was very strategic in everything they did. The timing of everything lined up perfectly. Could not be any better. And, to kind of coordinate everything and like put the stamp on everything that he's done leading up to this point, especially from this past year, he got the Super Bowl on the world's biggest stage in terms of sporting events outside of the World Cup. Don't come at me. But like huge, massive opportunity to kind of put your stamp on your newfound number one position amongst hip hop, like amongst rappers. Like, say what you want. Drake is going to stream. Drake is going to, do his numbers. But that ain't just hip hop numbers. Drake is a crossover pop star to this point. And in terms of rap, Kendrick got it. Like, he absolutely mollywopped this dude pretty much all year. And to stamp things, he did it once again at the Super Bowl on the world's biggest stage, especially in terms of hip hop and just American music in general. And the fact that he did it the way that he did it, man, how can you think otherwise?